If you want to see more videos and interviews like this from influential people in tech, finance, and sports, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the bell to be alerted. And go a step further and join the YouTube and membership area for early releases of videos like this. I'm out of here. Ha! It's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. Today I've got my man Tony Moon. I actually just met him over the internet. He commented on one of my videos. He had a very interesting background. I'm like, hey, you know what? We could probably get some knowledge from this guy. He's in the mortgage game. He's not a typical mortgage lender, and we'll talk about that here shortly. But really, I wanted to bring him on to get a pulse on what's going on in the real estate game, in the mortgage game, and see if we can get some heads up on things that's going on, possibly because of the Fed and all that money printing they're doing. Tony Moon, what's going on, brother? Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, man. It's nice to be on. It's nice meeting you, CV. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So this is kind of go through how I met you. You commented on one of my videos. Which video were you watching?
It was on Jane Bond.
Okay.
Part 1.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, randomly, but there was another video that you guys did with her. It was you and another gentleman that it was like a three-way kind of conversation you guys were having.
Okay, one of the
and this was I think it was
off the chain ones, huh? The live stream.
Yeah, it was. I think it was earlier in I guess it was March.
Okay.
Like, I remember because she was packing up and she was leaving.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuck with me because we kind of did the same thing.
Wow.
And we hunkered, you know. So I hunkered before like everyone else kind of got wind of things. So when I heard that, it piqued my interest because I was like, wow, you know, everyone else seems to have more of a kind of lackadaisical, relaxed attitude, but she's actually, you know, talking about packing, leaving, getting a shotgun, you know, training,
I remember that.
using that. I was like, wow, she's really prepared, you know, ready to go Mad Max.
You know, so. She's actually she's former military. I didn't know that until we had our interview, our one-on-one interview a few weeks ago.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So she's interesting lady, interesting life. I'm actually gonna have her back on soon because we've got a list of questions from my YouTube Premium members that they brought up some really good questions that I want to ask her and pick her brain on. But today I'm picking your brain, Tony. Give me like a background on yourself, man. I mean, you kind of gave me a little bit of your background in the emails, but tell me a little bit more about you and, you know, our audience so they'll know your background.
Sure. I've been doing the mortgage business since 2005, and you know, I live in LA, California. It's one of the bigger cities, but I'm east in one of the suburbs near Pasadena, and I've been a native here for the past, I'd say, almost 40 years. So I've seen real estate cycles in California, specifically in LA, Los Angeles. My dad was an investor. You know, he owned property, and I got into this business just by sheer chance in 2005. And at that time, I mean, the refi business was booming. There was a large company called AmeriQuest. So I worked for one of their subsidiaries, and then that's when the crisis hit. And then I actually had a broker's license. I became a broker, and then the rules changed because at that time we had direct contact with appraisers, but they now instituted what's called the AMC, which is appraisal management company. So there's a go-between between us and the appraisers. So, you know, we don't have any undue influence on them. But because of that, I actually had to join a larger kind of broker umbrella, and I started working with them. And then now I'm actually working for another broker umbrella, but I've been doing this for, I'd say, like 15 years, easy. And yeah, I've kind of seen the trends and cycles, but what kind of wanted me to write that comment on that interview was because Jane mentioned that she had a conversation with an appraisal management company or appraisal company where they're writing down appraisals 20 to 30%. So that kind of like, that piqued my interest too, like, wow. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I haven't heard anything, you know, like that.
Okay.
Well,
so
the thing is, you know, the appraisals that, like, I haven't seen that yet, you know, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's down the pike because there's other things that are happening in terms of like the guidelines. I'll send you something that I snapshotted, and then, you know, we can talk about it too. But I'm seeing more in terms of strictness of guidelines. Like, for example, back in 2007 and 8, the first thing that big banks did was reduce and freeze lines of credit, right? Or either way, just did away with them. They're kind of on that same playbook right now. So my advice to a lot of,
Really?
my clients and even to your listeners who have a home is if you're going to refinance and take money out, do it now
Mm.
because they're going to start restricting that. There's also products that they're pulling. So if you're, let's say, a self-employed business owner, there's a lot of products that they're going to be pulling where they're not going to make it available. So you have to kind of fit under a certain paradigm for them to, want to fund you. But see, I kind of saw this happen back, in 7 and 8 when a lot of the small business owners, I mean, they have lines of credit as their lifeblood for their business. Whatever they buy and sell, their inventory or services, they'll use their home equity line of credit. So when these banks shut down these lines of credit, I mean, they couldn't do anything anymore. They can buy their product or inventory. They couldn't, pay, for any services. And what concerns me now is that you have that coupled with this pandemic where everyone's kind of locked down. And I'm in LA County, so we're going to be going through this probably until, I don't know, June, because I know it's not really, in the horizon in terms of when they're going to lift the lockdown. So we may go longer. But if that's the case, I mean, you have all these small business owners that are going to be hurting and two fronts. They don't have the business coming in, right? The demand. And not only that, but they're going to be running out of cash, not only just, their savings, but, the equity in their homes, they're not going to even be able to tap into that as well. So I kind of see this as like getting screwed like three different ways, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, that's funny you bring up that whole thing about small businesses and like lines of credit, right? I saw last month, on Zero Hedge something about
Uh-huh.
a Cabbage, a lender, one of those lenders, business lenders. They actually shut down. They were doing no new lines of credit, and they were all focusing on the PPP and EIDL. Well, not the EIDL, but the PPP loan stuff, because there's money to be made in that whole industry now, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. So viewers, take advantage of what you can now before that door closes. But on the line of credit, they could pull your line of credit, couldn't they? So you
Yeah,
probably
they
want to go
can.
for a
And it's
loan.
that, and then also this is just kind of for for your listeners who have like, um, elder parents or relatives, is to look at a reverse mortgage in terms of the line of credit on a reverse mortgage. The thing about that is they can never close that line of credit. But not only that, but it grows into in perpetuity as long as they didn't use it. As long as there's um, what do you call that? There's like reserves. There's a credit
Hmm.
on that line of credit where they haven't used it. That balance grows where they actually can use it, you know, more into the future. I mean, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but what I'm trying to say is that it's a line of credit that works differently than the line of credits that the banks have. So it basically grows instead of shrinks because it's a reverse
Gotcha.
mortgage. I don't know. You have to kind of wrap your head around that a little bit,
No, I
you know?
understand. Yep. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, man, that makes
Yeah, but
sense. That's good. That's a good advice. Good advice. Tell us a little bit about. So you're not, as I stated at the beginning, you're not a traditional lender, mortgage lender. You're a direct lender. Is that correct?
actually, I do a lot of different banking institutions, right? So I have larger banking institutions that, I will broker to. I also have, smaller, medium sized, I guess you can call it lenders that don't have any banking institutions that I would broker them out to as well. But then I'm also involved with commercial lending as well, and also private money. So I deal with anything that has to do with any sort of collateral. I'll be able to
Yeah.
find an investor for it. So
Mm,
yeah, so I kind of
interesting.
have. I mean, there's a lot of brokers that actually specialize in one, like either residential, commercial, private money. But I don't know. I've kind of been able to do all three because I've also been an investor for hard or private money or hard money, as they call it, as well. So I kind of understand how that world works. And then the commercial loan, that side, that just came from the residential business that I do, where these, a lot of these business owners, they have a commercial property that they own, they want to refinance, they want to buy something else, so that kind of fell on my lap as well. So that kind of gave
Gotcha.
me the opportunity to look at all the different, ways of lending on real estate.
Interesting. So today, I really wanted to touch bases with you on what you're seeing at the ground level, at the street level, Tony, when it comes to this mortgage game, this private money, as you stated, commercial, residential. What are you seeing? Are you seeing cracks in the walls, in the foundations of this industry? And if so, is it because of the Fed?
Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of money that's out there. So the whole servicing side of it is not something I really got into, but it's from what I understand it, because of the forbearance program, that's really going to kind of mess up the payments that the servicers make to the bondholders, right? So they need to have these large cash reserves, which is why they're asking for a bailout. But I always tell my clients this who have investment properties and who have any sort of debt out there. It's like everything is fine until someone misses a payment, right? It's as soon as that one person misses a payment, then it just kind of goes up the food chain. And I
Yep.
kind of see that happening here too, where you get enough people missing the payment. There's only so much weight that these servicers have in terms of cash that they'll be able to cover, and they're going to need bailout money as well. And obviously, the Fed's going to print more. Um, I mean, it's just kind of a weird market right now because I track the 10-year Treasury,
Yep.
and I look at that, and I look at the Fannie Mae bonds as well. And there was a period when the 10-year was at 1.5, and rates were about like in the high threes, maybe. And
Hmm.
now the 10 years at like a little over half, but rates really haven't moved that much lower because I have
And
like a
why
pipeline
why
of
is that?
clientele.
Why have rates been inelastic while the 10 year has been dropping?
That's the thing. I don't know why. I mean,
Mm.
for me, I look at the fundamentals, and it's like, where would the money go, right? In terms of it's not going to bonds, going to stocks, but I don't see that correlation. And we have these huge swings. I mean, 1,000 point, I think 3,000 point swing, and yet, they don't correlate into treasuries. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that are smarter than me on that end, so I'm not going to pretend I know much about that. But in terms of here on the side where I'm originating loans, the consumers don't see it. They don't see it as much as, let's say, maybe the larger banks would, right?
So is that spread? Who's profiting from that? Who's making money from that spread?
I mean, the way I see it from from my viewpoint is just to keep the mortgage companies going, and I think to keep the banks funded as well. You know, so it's just a huge, just kind of. I don't know how much longer this can play out for because, I personally thought in 2015 and 16 we would see some sort of a recession,
Me
but
too.
they
Yeah.
just kind of just kept printing on, and now here we are in 2020, right? And
With
now we're
unlim
starting to
with
see,
QE on infinity, right?
yeah, exactly.
And the Treasury, pretty much the boss of the Fed, which is insane. The Federal Reserve.
Yeah, and then you got a pandemic. You got like mile-long food lines at food banks. So um, I was listening to this one interview last night, and it was this one gentleman. He had a fund, and he was a mortgage broker as well, but he was really optimistic. And then I looked at the date of the interview, it's like in the beginning of April,
Oh,
April 3rd, but
makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
it was really overly optimistic. But we just had our first quarter GDP numbers come in, right? And weren't they at negative, like negative
Yes.
four, something like that? And then the lockdown went into effect, and no, we went to a lockdown here in the end of March.
Hmm.
And so I think we were already in trouble.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. Like, I think one of the symptoms, us being the one country that's doing the most bailouts from this pandemic. I'm not saying that there didn't need to be some type of government intervention because this is something unprecedented, right? You have the whole economy just
Yeah.
screech to a complete halt. Um, I understand, having some type of bridge between that period and when we can kickstart this economy. But to see the
Right.
U.S. take these types of measures lets me know that it's been a house of cards really ever since 2008, 2009.
Yeah. And it was just, I mean, I look at this because I get news, I'm of, Korean descent.
Mm-hmm.
So I get news from Asia, and then my wife, she's Taiwanese, from Taiwan. So she gets news from Asia as well. We have different news sources that we look at. But
Nice.
politically here, I mean, we were really lax. I mean, this thing was
Very.
already hitting us. I mean, China knew about this. I think it was in like September, October. They knew about it then, and they basically knew about it through Lunar New Year. And it's, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's like kind of the typical attitude in some parts of Asia where it's like, what, let's just slap it together and and I think they had that attitude with this where, they can kind of suppress it, but it got out of control. And yeah, I started getting alarmed in January, when I
Same
saw it
here.
spread. Yeah. And
Same
then when
here.
they shut down Wuhan, because, one thing Chinese people love is money, so they're
Yes.
not going to shut down their whole economy. So there must be, something's really bad over there, right? But
Also to that, Tony, no, other countries, the Western culture loves money
right.
and capitalism and that as well. So to me, to see people say that this thing is a hoax or it's a fake, it's just like the
Uh,
flu. All you have to do is use your common sense, people. They would not shut down full countries if it were just a flu because they're not benefiting from this right now. The
right.
powers that be, yeah,
Mhm. Especially the Chinese Communist Party.
right.
These guys, they have a lot of invested in large industries because none of their factories and other companies are truly independent. They all have party ties. So for them to shut down, I mean, they can put two and two together where they're shutting everything down and everyone's going to be going home. I mean, the challenge for them, and it has been now. I mean, if you look at kind of the news coming out of the Epoch Times, which is one of the
I
sources
love,
I go to,
yeah, me too.
yeah, you can see they're having problems in different regions now. I mean, the virus is breaking out in Harbin,
Yep,
right? And
yep.
then you have internal problems too, where I think it was like a couple of weeks ago, there was two different provincial police, I guess, departments that were fighting over, who had jurisdiction over this one bridge that crosses over, right? From is it I forgot that province, but it's where Wuhan is.
Hmm.
So they had that, and that never happens. I mean, these are internal things that we're seeing within China that because of this virus, and I'm sure now in hindsight, if the Chinese Communist leadership knew this was going to happen, they probably would have replayed it differently. But now in hindsight, I mean, they're dealing with this, but it's the same playbook, where they're trying to be very heavy-handed on this, and it's not working for them, especially for the businesses. What I think we should probably follow is like South Korea's example. But the only problem is that we don't do extensive testing here like they have, and plus they have in a way social tracking where they can kind of track you. So I know most of us here in America we're not down with that. So
And you're right. We're not. I mean, here in Michigan, man, they're going up to the state capitol with their guns out, walking in, and
I
it's like,
know.
okay, we understand you want to be American and your rights and all of that, but at some point we have to use common sense here and realize this is not like the government. Yes, they're gonna try to take advantage of the situation. I'm not
Right.
saying that they won't. They definitely will. But some stuff is just common sense, in my opinion. And if we need to stay locked down, and it's not even a real lockdown, like people are complaining about a half-ass lockdown, which in my opinion,
It's true.
if in my opinion, Tony, if you want to see a real flattening of the curve, we would have had to literally shut borders of each state. Like no one can come into, California from Nevada or wherever,
Right.
right? That's a true
Right.
lockdown to me because right now I could jump on a plane right now from New York
Hmm.
and head anywhere in this country
Right.
or
And we're
get in
not
the
welding
or
people
get in
into
the
their
car.
homes.
Huh? Say that.
And
Say that
we're
again.
not welding people into their homes, so it's
No,
very
no,
different.
we're not. We're not. I don't think we should go that far. But I think
No, absolutely not.
yeah. I just think that people are complaining about a lockdown that's a half-ass lockdown in the first place. So
Right.
I guess I could side with them. Like if we're not going to fully lock it down, then open it back up, and we're starting to see a lot of states do that, and I think it's a wrong move, man. I really think this is horrible. Tell us about like I want to get back to the mortgage stuff, but I do want to, since we're on the topic of the virus, what's Taiwan did a great job, man.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, Taiwan did a great job. What are you hearing from South Korea? You're from there. I'm sure you still have family there. What are they saying? Because South Korea did a great job as well. What are they saying about what's really going on with this
Well,
virus in particular?
I mean, the thing with the Asian countries is that they've had more experience with viruses than we've had here because they have what
Right.
the bird flu, swine flu, right? And then I don't know, I'm going to date myself, but back in the late 60s, they had the Hong Kong flu, right?
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
pretty prevalent. I don't know if you heard of that, but my dad had that, and he like tell us stories about like how bad it was for him and how many people have died from it.
Mm.
So that kind of was ingrained into our, I guess, our family history in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
verbal history, in terms of what someone has gone through. So the way I don't South Korea, from what I understand, they have extensive testing. I haven't really kind of tracked them in terms of what they're doing, but I know Taiwan's done a lot more in terms of being able to handle this. I think they were the first country to close their borders with China when this came out. And then not only that, but they're also the only country right now that is exporting face masks, and without any strings attached, right? That sort of thing, political strings attached to it. So they're the ones sending out face masks. So I think there's a meeting the middle of this month sometime where I think the World Health Organization is meeting, and there's a proposition to have them included in that body. I think I don't know the full details, but that's kind of what I heard, which
That'd
I
be
think they
good.
should. I think they
Absolutely.
should. You know,
Absolutely. And I actually applaud Trump for defunding the WHO. That was a great move because it's just so evident,
yeah,
right? It's easy to
yeah,
see that they were highly influenced by China and
yeah,
still are to a certain extent. It's just crazy. It's crazy. So
yeah. I mean, it's just you look at like kind of their main talking points during the early stages of this. When we were, I guess February, March, and it's compared to that to now, it's a total 180 degrees, and now they're trying to make it seem as if they were there in the forefront. I mean, it's bullshit,
it's
honestly.
crazy,
So
man.
I'm
It
glad
really
we
is.
defund. We're not funding that anymore.
Yeah, I'm really,
You
and
know?
you know what? I'm be honest with you. I don't know any prior president that, and I'm not saying that Trump hasn't done some things in this virus pandemic situation. He dropped the ball on absolutely, but
Right.
I have to say, man, I don't see any other president doing it like this as far as defunding the WHO that quickly. It's not a
Yeah.
politically nice move to make at this point.
Right. And then
Yeah.
if you're watching like Sky News out of Australia, like the Australians, they're pissed off. They're really pissed off because I think one of their diplomats made a comment saying Australia is being difficult and they're no different than a piece of gum on China's shoe, and that you just need like a sharp rock or object just to scrape it off. I mean, just the connotation of that is really insulting. But then I think if you translate that into Mandarin, it's even that much more.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, there's
Wow.
huge tensions going on over there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, I did hear something about Australia, and they were demanding them to redact some statements and stuff. It's
Yeah.
just it's crazy how China is because they did that to I think Minnesota or somewhere over
Yeah.
here. They like demanded them to change their rhetoric. Like,
That was
are you
Wisconsin. Yeah,
serious?
I don't. The thing is, I mean, if you come from a cultural background where you just kind of tell everybody this is how it has to go down, and everybody just kind of scurries about, and then you come out to the world stage and you try to deal with globally the same heavy-handed way that you've done internally, domestically. I mean, it's not going to work, And plus, people aren't stupid. I mean, honestly, it's like they're doing all this, and they're just, I mean, they're digging their hole even deeper in terms of credibility and just sort of any sort of goodwill the world may have had in the past. But at this point, I mean, from everything I'm reading, a lot of the manufacturing is going to probably be moving out of China. I mean, there's incentives already in Japan. I think Abe put out incentives for Japanese companies to basically either move back to Japan or one of the other Asian countries around there. And I know we're kind of in the works with that. I mean, Australia is going to probably do the same thing. So,
Yeah, they
China
are.
may be the world's factory, but if there's no orders coming in, what are you going to do, right?
It's gonna be a huge reduction in GDP.
Right.
On a number that was already lied, that was already falsified.
Right.
you know.
And I think it's just culture. I mean, when you're ingrained in a system like a communist system where you're practically rewarded to lie because you got to keep up numbers or a certain facade. I mean, that translates to kind of how people see business being done, and maybe to a certain level how maybe strangers may interact. I mean, there's a lot more social ties from different areas of where you're from. You feel more camaraderie with people from those areas, those provinces. But outside of that, people may have certain biases. I mean, even internally in China as well. You know, so yeah, it's going to be interesting how all this is going to work out for them.
Why do you think we didn't take this seriously? I mean, we have some of the best, supposedly, the best surveillance systems, agencies, billions of dollars spent, black budgets. How did we miss this, or do you think Trump was privy to the information and he just said it was a non-factor?
I don't think he got 100% of the information. From what I remember, I think in December or January, wasn't there a Chinese delegation that came here and met with Trump, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So they knew about this way back then, and they still met with him. I mean, I don't think he knew. I don't think anyone in the West knew the severity of it. I mean,
So
when I
that
was,
lets me that well, Tony, that makes me
uh,
feel like China has a pretty good grip on surveillance or lack of from other countries. Then, because that would tell me they're just kind of a black hole as far as what intel we have on China. Wouldn't you come to that same conclusion?
probably so. I
Yeah,
mean, in terms of intel, I think for a lot of American companies that are investing in China, there's a party official that's there with them. So they're probably fed whatever they need to know, right? I mean,
yeah,
unless you actually go digging, or unless you actually kind of take a more of a wide view, then you don't really see all the things China, the communists. I don't want to say China because I think that kind of labels the people, and I think the people there are suffering
right.
right now.
Yes,
But I
I
want to
agree.
lay it at the CCP. The
Hmm.
CCPs really, I mean, now we see them for what they are.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of thieving, lying. If you want to talk about organ harvesting, Falun
Hmm.
Gong, and talk about like the Uyghurs. I mean,
Yep.
you know, I think if it's time for a lot of American companies to wake up and bring the stuff back home. We got to
And
make
it,
stuff here now.
and it's time for countries as a whole to stop turning their head. That we've turned our head for so many years, just for the
Right.
sake of cheap labor and cheap imports. So
It
I
was all
think
for money,
yeah, yeah. I
the
think, but
profit motive.
exactly. I think so. I think that is a silver lining out of this whole situation is that maybe now we can kind of rebalance things and bring some of that stuff back home because a true country, there's not wealth without producing something. And so if we can
Right.
bring a lot of that back, man, I think we would actually be better off in the long run. Maybe not
Which,
in the short run, but in the long run. It's a
yeah, there's going
marathon,
to be
not a
sh- short-term pain, right?
yes, yes.
But benefits in the long run, And then also the politicians. I mean, here in California, I mean, I think Dianne Feinstein had her campaign manager, or her internal manager. He's from Hong Kong, but it's the Chinese Communist Party too. So a lot of our politicians are, if not
Fauci,
them directly,
it's
but maybe
coming out
maybe
that
their
Fauci
spouses.
does too.
Yeah, him too. I mean, he helped fund that lab in Wuhan, right? I mean,
Exactly.
so I think a lot of this stuff needs to be exposed, and like I think Newsom, he just signed $1 billion deal with a Chinese company as well.
What is that?
So that's coming out. I mean, it's just
Yeah, I saw that, man. I'm just like, oh my god. So, kind of back to the mortgage game and that industry. What do you see happening from this fallout, from this basically screeching halt in GDP here?
so
What's going to happen in the next
it's
six
gonna.
to 12 months? Do you see?
I think it's not gonna be good in the coastal areas, like where I'm at, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, because one, like city of LA, we have over 50% that's unemployed, right? And
Mm-hmm.
not only that, but I don't know how many millions or thousands, hundreds of thousands in LA are on that forbearance program, which is a crock. Because there's no way you can't make 3 months of mortgage payments. I mean, how do they expect you to make that big lump sum fourth
When it
payment,
starts back
right?
up, right?
It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So do you think? I
So
mean,
we're
do you
gonna
think they're gonna? Because I mean, I think I was listening to one of your interviews, and you feel like, or maybe it was something I was reading, but residential will have a stronger, will actually be better than commercial, and I can see that. What are you seeing
right.
from a commercial standpoint, and how bad it's going to get with that? We see what happened when WeWork and the nightmare mess they were in even before this virus, and now it's even worse. No one's using
Yeah.
commercial real estate. So kind of tell us on the commercial side, then the residential side, what do you see happening?
Well, a lot of the regional commercial lenders that I work with, I mean, they only want to fund their clients, whatever they have, depositors, they have, in their banks. They're not really looking at new clients, and they're taking a lot more scrutiny over the types of properties. For example, like shopping plazas, man, that's not going to do well. So they've been they were avoiding shopping plazas since last year, but it's going to be probably more so now than before. And I think just smaller commercial condominium spaces, those might get hurt because those are a lot of small business owners, probably have about 50 to, less than 100 employees, so those may kind of, get hurt too. The office space, yeah, definitely, especially with all the, stay at home and, working from home. And I think people in general are just kind of getting used to that shift where, okay, I don't have to go to the office, 3 or 4 days out of the week. I can do it like maybe one day and, do the other, 4 days at home or something like that. So there's that kind of shift going on. So yeah, there's not going to be a huge demand for, I think, office space either. And then on the residential side, I mean, I want to be optimistic to what I'm saying, but you have these layoffs happening and people are getting, let go. I had a couple of clients who recently were attempting to refinance their place, but they're laid off. So I mean, that just stops the process right there. So you're going to have that issue. And then plus the whole, what happens after the forbearance, right? If they do the forbearance program and then that 4th month rolls around, they can't make that payment, then what, right? I mean, it's going to be kind of a backlog of all these people, and then where would we be with the quarantine? And I think every, region is going to be different, but I'm more, I guess, LA, Orange County, Riverside, Inland Empire, that's specific because that's kind of like the area that I really work with. And I have concerns over that because I saw this happen before, back in 7 and 8. And then, it's going to be just, people are just going to have to make choices, right? Especially if they have investment property. Do I let that one go or, keep my primary as long as I can? What bills do I need to pay? I've had clients call me and they say, yeah, I just lost my job and, the mortgage is coming up and they're asking me for forbearance. What do you think I should do? And then my advice is like, just really negotiate with them. See if you can tack it to the tail end of the note, which is kind of hard, because it's not anywhere in the loan documents and they'll need to write in an addendum for it. But if there's no way to do that, then yeah, there's only way, you can't make the payment, then what you can do? You can't make the payment, right? I mean, you still got to eat, put food on the table, right? And keep the lights on.
Yeah, no doubt. So so you're in the LA area. What is it looking like as far as this virus, man? How bad is it? Do you see what's people's reaction on the ground there? Like, because I have someone in San Diego that's part of my room, and cases are starting to really rise there.
Yeah, we're a hotspot, like LA County. We're like a hotspot. I think what was it? I think we had like 20,000 cases. I don't know off the top of my head. I think what was it? But yeah, we're leading the state.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Are people taking it seriously though, Tony?
I think so. I mean, with the area I'm at is really Asian heavy.
Okay, so they're probably gonna. Yep.
Yeah, but then it's when I see like Hispanics, blacks, and whites. They start putting on masks as well and start taking it seriously, right? That's when it becomes real. But it's like, I mean, we're kind of like the internet generation, or just raised on YouTube, right? Where you see it on your screen, it doesn't become real until you go out, and you see like the lines at the food banks, or you see people lined up, social distancing, 6 feet apart. I mean, none of that becomes real until you go out and experience it. But yeah, I think it was pretty crazy when it was like the beginning of March. I mean, people, that whole toilet roll phase everyone was going through.
That
right?
Crazy.
So
I didn't understand that. I did not understand that, man.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. So, yeah, since then it's died down, and now things are a little bit more, I guess you can say, semi-normal, if you can call it that. Costco still has that line, where you have 6 feet apart, and we let so many people in at a time, so.
Yeah, Florida just had its deadliest day yesterday.
And they're talking about reopening.
And they're reopening. It's just, I just don't understand. You know why it's this way, bro? Because we're politicizing this virus. We're making it a political thing, So.
Well, yeah, and the media didn't help, because in the beginning they're like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's like the flu, no biggie, right? And then they flipped from that to, what was that? Wasn't Pelosi in New York, or where was she? She was in San Francisco. It's like, come on out, go do this, go do that, I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And then they flipped 180 degrees, right? And it's like, yeah, this thing is, the numbers are a lot more, higher, this and that. So,
And
they
then they
lost all
flipped again,
credibility. So
and
yeah,
then Trump flipped again. Now he's saying liberate Michigan, liberate. Like, I just don't understand what is going on. What are our leaders? Who did we who did we hire or vote in to be our leaders, man? I don't know. I think it's a Western culture thing, like you said. Like, Asians in the East, kind of, they're used to this. They're used to dealing with these things, and it's self evident if you look at the curves as far as cases. All the
right.
East countries in the East are all like way lower than the West. I know China's probably way higher for sure,
Oh
but
yeah.
even that, you take X out China, you look at all the other countries out the East. They've done a better job than the Western countries.
Well, I mean, they're all masked up now over there. So, and then I think they don't practice the social distancing as much as we do here. I mean, we're pretty adamant about it in certain, states, but I think they're a little bit more. They're not as what's the word for it? They're not kind of wound as tight, right? Because they kind
Mm-hmm.
of been through this before, so they have a certain knowledge and gauge of like how to like social etiquette, right?
Mm-hmm.
How social etiquette may have changed now on the street because they still take buses and cabs and
Right.
ride the trains and all that stuff, right? But they understand that social etiquette's changed a little bit and they're more mindful of that,
Mm-hmm.
versus I guess here because of the news and because how some people like may think that this is a hoax or it's not as bad as they say it is. They openly defy those the quarantine orders, or they don't want to wear a mask. I mean, I think was it yesterday I was listening to a podcast, and this one security guard, I think it was in New York or in the Bronx, where he had a altercation with a patron at the store, and this
They
dude pulled
shot
out
and
a gun and
killed him.
shot him, and
Yeah.
yeah, shot him in the head.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. I heard about that.
I mean,
Sad, man. It's so
and the
sad.
guy had he had like 8 kids.
Oh my God.
I mean,
Yeah, I heard about that.
seriously,
That's just so sad.
yeah,
So have you directly or indirectly, people who's been affected by this virus?
I have. One of my colleagues, she's someone I work with, like a business contact. Her father just recently passed away. She sent out an email,
Mm-hmm.
right, talking about how her father was in a nursing home,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's a real
I
hit
also have
hot
a friend
spot.
who
Yeah, that's a real
it
big hot
is,
spot. Yes.
it is, and the thing is, like, I knew this was coming because back in like I think it was the beginning of March, there was like a Korean airline stewardess that tested positive in Seoul, but she came through LAX, right?
Oh.
And then Honolulu was another hotspot that, I guess the governor there just kind of poo-pooed it off, and so people were traveling back and forth through Honolulu through LAX. I mean, come on, man. It's just, you know, I don't know what it is. I mean, just like it's so obvious that it was gonna basically, just what do you call it? Just grow exponentially here. I mean, plus we have a huge Asian population community, both of Korean descent, Chinese, Japanese, Hawaiians that come back and forth.
Yeah.
So how can it not? How can we not be a hotspot? It was either us or the Bay Area. San Diego maybe, but yeah, mainly us in the Bay Area. That's kind of where I was putting my money.
Yeah. I put a tweet out back in mid-February saying that New York was going to be the Wuhan 2.0. I said New York City specifically, and sure enough, I mean, like you said, if you at least tracked this thing since January and took it seriously, you could see how what would be the next hotspots, and
Yeah.
it certainly happened that way. And you were going to finish saying something about someone else that you knew was affected by this.
Oh, right. This he's a Taekwondo master. His buddy, a friend of his, who's also a referee in that style, in that sport style. He has, and he's in the hospital right now. And then yeah, I have a neighbor. Um, neighbors, the grandson's mom. She has it. And yeah, I know of quite a few people around me that actually caught it and have it. Thank God no one's passed away from it, so that's great. But yeah, it's not,
It's
not
not the
fake.
flu. They always try to just, the media, the ones that want to really kind of put the tinfoil hat on. They want to say, oh, it's only this many died percentage wise, and the rest have recovered. But the people who have recovered, they don't tell the full story of those individuals. How long it took to
Yeah,
recover. That's one thing. Like here, It took my family those of us who got this virus. It took us like
Uh huh.
between 3 and 5 weeks to recover fully from this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I've been reading too, and that's what I've been
Yeah,
hearing. That the recovery
yeah.
is not easy. You know.
No, no, it's
So
not. So it's gonna be interesting to see, man.
yeah.
I just don't
Yeah,
see
it's
us.
real.
It's real. I'm not saying you're gonna die from it, but if you get it and you have symptoms, it's gonna be a rough 3 4 weeks for you. And what does that
It's
do
gonna
to
mess you up.
productivity? Yeah, what does that?
Exactly.
That just
Right.
messes everything up. So we'll have to see what happens, man. Any last words in regards to the real estate industry and the mortgage game, lending game? What are you seeing that you want to kind of let people know about ahead of time?
Um, just that this is gonna be a repeat of like eight, seven, eight, nine, whichever year you choose. You know, and it has nothing to do with subprime loans or anything. This is all, a lot of it's external now, right? So I think, if people need to look at tapping into the equity of their home, do it now. Don't wait, because the banks will keep changing their guidelines, and they're starting to penalize, cash out scenarios, and they're probably going to do more so of that, as time goes on, because they're getting, tighter on their end. So my advice to everyone is like, if you need to refinance, do it now. And if you need to take money out, do it now. Do everything now, because there's no way to predict what's going to happen the month after or the month after that. Especially if you're in LA. Different parts of the country, I guess it's going to really depend. But I can't imagine the unemployment not weighing down like on just the whole country. Wherever you live, I'm sure there's people out there that aren't working, and they're going to have a difficult time, and that's just going to translate to rents. Landlords don't get paid, so they don't make the mortgage payments, and so forth and so on. So if you have equity, like, tap into it. And yeah, I mean, just hold on to your cash right now, because I think things are going to kind of get hairy.
So do you
Because the
see a
news.
deflationary spiral, or do you think we're going to have inflationary effects from what the Federal Reserve is actually doing right now?
I mean, this is just my opinion as regular, you know, Joe Schmo on the ground. Is like, I think it's going to be both. It depends on what it is. And
Yeah,
there's not going to be a
I
big demand
agree.
for flat screen TVs, right?
Yep.
Or like $50,000 cars,
Right.
right? But there's going to be a
Right.
demand for beef. I mean, I think that, Zero had
Oh
said like
yeah.
1 out of 5 Wendy's doesn't have beef
I
anymore,
saw that
right?
today.
It's like,
Yeah.
what?
I saw that.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be inflation when it comes to food, and that's just because of supply and demand as well. So my, like, the everyday items that you're
Yeah.
gonna need, like especially food, I think you will see inflation in that, because everything that I'm reading and seeing, and this whole thing about the grand solar minimum, and how
Mm.
crop cycles are kind of different, and then you hear a lot of these guys in the Midwest, and I have clients that have family out in the Midwest as well, and I mean, I think food prices are going to definitely go high. I'm not saying there's not going to be anything, but when it's there, it's just going to be expensive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Definitely see a mixture. I
Yeah.
see a deflationary type of spiral for assets like homes.
Yeah.
Now stocks, that's another. I don't know, man, because that's a tricky one in my opinion. It could go either way. You
Yeah.
know.
You can buy Bitcoin. It went
Yeah,
up past 9,000. I think it was like 2 days ago, or was it
yeah,
yesterday?
we didn't get a chance to
Yeah.
touch 9,000. It touched 91 again. It did a spike, but I think it
Yeah.
pulled back again. We didn't get a chance to talk about Bitcoin and
It's at like
how
88 or
yeah, 88, something like that. You actually were
yeah.
an early Bitcoin. I would consider you an early Bitcoin adopter. Tell us a little bit about that whole experience and what intrigued you to dip your toe in that whole cryptocurrency thing.
I think it's the idea of digital money, and the fact that Asia is going to be one of the first places to pick it up, right? And not only that, but the whole idea where you don't have a middle person in between, right?
Hmm.
So it's just basically yourself and crypto. But I mean, I got into that just out of a fluke. I was looking at it, and I was doing homework on it, researching it. I was like, this may have some possibilities, and I put some money into it, and then it just kind of went from there. It's
Where do
not
you see
because I was that much smarter. I just kind of
where do you see it going in the future though? A lot of
um,
regulations is coming in, and it doesn't seem to be, since you got in pretty early, you remember what it was intended to be as far as Bitcoin, at least, this new digital cash
Yeah.
outside of the banking system. But it looks like we're heading right the other way. Most of the on
Right.
ramps are regulated and so on and so forth. So, where do you see Bitcoin's role in this, let's say, post COVID economy?
I think just another flight to safety, like gold and
Okay.
silver. I think you
Mm-hmm.
guys were talking about that last time with Jane, right?
Yep.
How like premiums on gold, silver, and I mean gold and silver is as like you can't even buy it at whatever the normal spot price was, right? So I think there's that. So I don't know if it would, but if it goes to 100,000, I guess we get to see John McAfee eat his penis, right? Because that's what he
Oh
said,
no, he
right?
rigged on it.
So I hope it goes to that.
He backed out on that
Oh,
one.
you did?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He did that at the beginning of the year. He
Such an outrageous
quickly.
statement.
I know, man. I really don't particularly care for
Man,
McAfee in the crypto space, man. He's just because it just doesn't he doesn't bring that legitimacy to it. Like to
right,
me, it turns more people away with the antics than just being because he's a smart guy. I just wish he would be more serious about things. But
right.
yeah, man, that's interesting. Good to get a chance to talk with you today, and I'm definitely gonna have you back on to give us an update in a few months. Cause you know what, man, and if people think I'm being like this gloom and doom person, I'm just looking
Uh-huh.
at the facts. I'm just being a
Right.
realist, and honestly, I think this fall will be worse than what we have now with this virus and dealing with it
Right.
because we're gonna have both the flu and COVID. So
Yeah,
they're two different viruses. You can catch them at the same time. and
exactly.
and so it's just gonna be interesting, man. I don't know when we'll get back to a normal, or will we just have a new normal? We'll have to see.
Yeah, we will. And I think, yeah, as the Fed keeps printing more money, right, and it goes into that black hole,
Yep,
right? I mean, we'll see that translate into gold and crypto,
for sure.
because I would say most people may not be aware of it, but there's, people like you, me, everyone else who basically pays attention, and that's kind of where, they'll start putting their money, and obviously the stock market as well, but I mean, who knows what, right there.
Yeah, that's a a coin toss on the stock market tip. Because again, it's just so many moving parts and so much direct intervention by the Federal Reserve, or now I should just say the Treasury, because they've pretty much taken over
It's
the Federal
unnatural.
Reserve.
It's
It
totally
is.
unnatural.
It is.
And it's like, and I studied finance too for my master's, and it's just nothing. I mean, I was studying finance in 2008, and it was just the big question was like, what's going to happen with all, after QE? That's what we were talking about, but we're way beyond that now, so anybody who can kind of like, visualize like the multiplication of dollars and money in front of them, and just seeing how worthless it's going to be because they're printing so much of it. I mean, you're not going to want to be holding too much of that, right? I mean, you're going to want to move into something else. So yeah, it's
So,
just, I
so
mean,
one last thing I
I
want to
think we live
ask.
in unprecedented times.
Yeah, one last thing I want to ask you though is because you're in the mortgage game and lending and everything. How do you feel about the line of
Hmm.
business you're in? Are you taking precautionary steps to maybe diversify yourself as far as your revenue and what you do, and protect your family's livelihood? How are you going to deal with this?
I think I'm probably one of the last dominoes to fall, because as long as people have homes and equity, and they're working, I can, you know, you know, I have a client, right? But
Hmm.
until there's none of that, I think, that I'm pretty much towards the end of, whatever needs, if there's any employment that falls or it takes a hit, I'm probably on the tail end of that. But um, well, I basically went into investing or lending. So, like as a hard money lender, I would lend out funds, but I don't even do that anymore right now because it's really risky out there.
Mm,
So, in terms of having plan B, I think for me personally, is just to kind of see where the market's going, and I don't have like another profession I could jump into,
right.
or another revenue stream, or anything like that. So I don't keep tabs of that. But yeah.
So yeah, man, guys, if you want to, if you need some lending options, assuming more so for real estate, you're not doing hard money loans at the moment. Can people reach out to you?
Yes, definitely they can. They can reach me through my email, website. It doesn't have to necessarily be in California. If they have a question regarding their state or something they're going through, I don't mind helping.
Okay,
Especially
good.
during these times, because I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions out there. Like what are my options? What can I do? So yeah, I mean, if they reach out through you, that's great too.
All right, cool. TonyWMoon.com. I've got the site on the screen right now, guys. Check him out if you guys have any questions. This guy knows what he's talking about. Tony, it's been a pleasure, and
Same here,
thanks.
CB.
Yeah, man, thanks.
Yeah,
I'll have you back on soon.
sounds good, man. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. All right.
Thank you for joining another Kicking It session. Make sure you hit the like, hit that share, and subscribe to this, and we'll check you guys out later. Holla.